I used to have, y'all, a 1977 Cutlass Supreme, two-door, coach lights on the side, Krager wheels, low-profile tires, Pioneer Super Tuner 3 radio with the pull-out. Did I mention the three-way 6x9s I had in the back and the 10s in the trunk? I wish I had some back. Are y'all hearing me? But here was the problem, y'all. When you saw me coming, it kind of leaned to one side. And the fella that painted it, Kent, was a fella by the name of Mr. George Craig. It looked like he had took spray paint and painted my car. I wish I had somebody. It has streaks and runs in it. But listen, every day, I'd be out there wiping on that old car, putting some armor all on the tires. And folk used to laugh at my car because the paint job was jacked up. It would lean into one side run. And folk couldn't understand why I would be bragging on that car and it was as jacked up as it was. But you know what they didn't know, Courtney? What they didn't recognize was when I bought it, it had been canceled out by the insurance company. I bought it as a salvage car. And when I first bought it, it was crunched all up in the front. It was 2 or 3 different colors. And while it did not look like much to them, I remember what it looked like when I bought it. Hello, somebody. So when I think about what it looked like when I bought it, and I think about what it looked like then, I knew my old hoopty had come a mighty long way. See, folk don't know why you shout like you shout, or why you run like you run, or why you cry like you cry, but they don't know how you started. They don't know how far you've come. He says, I'm undone. I'm worthless. Now, they did not understand in this particular culture worthless the way we understand worthless. See, worthless in our language means worth nothing. Worthless to them meant worth less. Let me teach it. In biblical times, a coin had a certain amount of weight. And the weight was based upon the face that was etched or inscribed on the coin. Please don't miss this now. So when a coin was originally made or originally minted, its value was based upon whose face was on the coin, because different faces carried a different amount of weight. Are y'all still praying with me? Over a period of time, as the coin would be passed from hand to hand and from pocket to pocket, are y'all praying with me? All of a sudden the face would begin to rub off and fade over time. Are y'all praying with me? Which means the face on it no longer looked like the original face when it was minted. And since the weight was based upon the face that it put on it, and since some of the face had been rubbed off, all of a sudden they would say it was not worth as much, so it was worth less. When you are worth less, it means that you've gone through something and it has robbed some of your original value off. It doesn't mean that you're worth nothing. It means that you're not worth as much as you used to be worth. But I've been passed from hand to hand. I've gone from trouble to trial, from tribulation to test, from heartache to headache, from headache to upset, from upset to setback, which means I am worth less than I was when I was originally made. But if I mess around and get back in the presence of God, I said, if I get in the presence of God, he says, I'll restore your worth and give you your value back. That ain't the shout. Here comes the shout. Most of us, when we come to God, we come to God having already failed at some stuff, having already messed up in some stuff, having already made some bad decisions in some stuff, having already got caught up in some stuff. I'm in the text right here. Isaiah didn't get messed up when he got there. He was messed up before he showed up there. See, the enemy would have you to think that you have messed up too much, but God says you won't realize how much more I'm going to give you until you finally show up. The reason the enemy doesn't want you to come to God is because he recognizes you show up worth less. But when you come into the presence of God, you leave worth more. Somebody just missed what I said. One thing about your mess is your mess never prevents you from seeing the Messiah. Isaiah discovered that he was messed up when he got in God's presence. God knew he was messed up when he was on the way to his presence. But God did not allow that to prevent him from entertaining the presence of Isaiah. You still ain't got it. I remember when William Jefferson Clinton was president of the United States. As a matter of fact, he was getting ready to sign some new initiative from HBCUs. At that particular time, I was serving on the board of trustees at Arkansas Baptist College. And so all trustees from historically black colleges and universities had been invited to Washington, D.C. to be there with President Clinton in the Rose Garden when he was signing this particular piece of legislation. Are y'all playing with me? But now here is the interesting thing, you all. Before I could go, although I had been invited, although the president had said he wanted me there, before I could show up, I had to go through some things. Please don't miss what I said. All of a sudden, I got a letter from the Secret Service. They already had my name, my address, and my social security number, but they had some questions for me, you all. They wrote me a letter, said, we need for you to explain these particular incidents. When I started looking at it, Courtney, they had an incident where I was in the 11th grade, and I was arrested in West Memphis when I was working at Pick Pack grocery store because I had some buddies that were working with me that had taken some meat out of the back door, and the manager felt like I was involved with it, so I had to go to the store and explain to the court and explain my part in it. Are y'all praying with me? Then they wanted me to explain in 1997, I had left home. I was on my way back. Now, not 1997, it was 1994. I was on my way from home back to Fayetteville. It was right after the Christmas holiday. Me and my boy Gyro were riding together. They stopped us in West Fork, Arkansas. They realized that Gyro's license had been suspended on points. The state trooper said, since it's a holiday, I'm not going to lock you up, but you need to wake your buddy up and tell him to drive. Gyro said, wake up, Chris, man. He was from Brazil. He said, Chris, wake up. You've got to drive, man. I said, no big deal. I woke up. I drove around. I jumped in the driver's side, getting ready to drive. And just before I was getting ready to pull off, the state trooper said, sir, can I see your license? I said, no problem. I pulled out my license. He came back. He said, can you step out of the car, please? I said, what seems to be the problem? He said, you've got a warrant for your arrest out of Washington County. I said, what in the world? When they got me back to the jail in Washington County, I discovered that 6 months earlier, I had gotten a speeding ticket that I had not paid, and they issued a warrant for my arrest. Y'all still ain't got it. And so then they wanted to ask me something else. We say now that you're living in Memphis, Tennessee, do you have a problem with respecting the law? Because we've noticed in the last year, you've had at least 4 speeding tickets. So I went on to explain that. And finally I said, why are you all asking me all of these questions? They said, because even though you have been invited, we cannot allow anybody and everybody to be in the presence of the president, which means if you've got too much mess, you cannot see him. Is there anybody thankful that you can't have too much mess in order to see God? It doesn't make a difference how you messed up. You can still